I'll be presenting it. I'll be presenting in screen. A second. Right. Right. Yeah. So today I plan to start a new topic. Okay? But before that, is the screen visible to everyone? Uh, the other, yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So we have a new topic for today. So it's a new topic, and what is it? Explain. Today we are going to talk about number systems. Okay, not number theory. Okay, but number systems. Number systems. I'm sure most of you have seen natural numbers, integers, and so on. So we will not be focusing on that too much. I will give an overview and try to explain why we come to integers and then why we come to rationals and then okay so on. But the focus will be irrational numbers. Okay, start with the focus will be the irrationals, and because these numbers are fundamentally different. Okay, and then more than just calculating things and so on, we'll try to prove things about irrational numbers. All right, develop techniques to prove that something is irrational. We'll see its connections with geometry. Okay, so maybe I should mention it here. So proving technique, because proving that something is not rational as a fundamentally new technique which maybe people have not seen. Okay, we'll see proving technique. I should just say proving technique because the technique we will use will be applicable, okay, in of course all sorts of places. And then the goal will be to see the connection with geometry, because really that's the reason why how irrationals come about, at least to begin with, maybe historically speaking. Okay, so we'll try to see connection with geometry. We might look at some constructions also, but then if we have the time, we will go to representation of rationals and irrationals, that is decimal representations. Now again, this is something which I'm sure you people might be able to compute the decimal form from a fraction or square root and so on, but we'll try to ask some interesting questions like the patterns in the decimal expansion and proving the Euclidean algorithm of that converting fractions to decimals. So decimal expansions. So we'll deal with it conceptually. Again, the focus is on really understanding the patterns that you may have seen before but may not have tried to prove. Okay, so this is a summary. We'll see how much we can get done. It's a 60 minutes class. So right, so let's get started. So how does the story begin? Okay, so obviously it begins with natural numbers, right? As I said, I'll give an overview. So we have the natural numbers. Right. Now, this is a very fundamental question, so it may not be easy to explain, but then I'll still put it here. Why the natural numbers? Simply put. Yeah. And maybe one of you can try to maybe just express your views on this. Why do we have these numbers, mathematically speaking, or just practically? Yes. Anyone, just please have a go. Yeah, I just want this to be interactive so that you can. All right. Yeah, anyone wants to? Okay. Right. So the natural numbers are, as you know, they are counting numbers. They help us to count. So that could be one explanation, right? They help us to count. That's certainly something that you all understand. But more than that, on a slightly deeper level, okay, it is what can be said as abstraction of quantities. Now, let me first give you a parallel of this with. So this is a slightly, I don't want to say philosophical, but this slightly deeper point. Okay. First, let me give a parallel of this with abstraction in general. So see, abstraction is like language, because language is an abstraction, right? Language. What is language? It's an abstraction. I should say maybe words, right? Words are an abstraction of things, right? Like you use the word, let's say, pen. Okay? What do you try to do when you use this word? You try to take out the fundamental nature or the fundamental component of all pens in the world. It could be a ballpoint pen. I'm not writing. It could be a fountain pen. It could be different kinds of pens, right? But then there is something common in them, and that's what you try to filter out. And you use one thing for all of them, right? Just the word pen, and that kind of captures a lot of things. At least on one level of detail, and that is enough for in most cases, right? So, in that sense, I'm saying that words are an abstraction of, maybe I can just say objects. Right? Maybe I should write just that. Okay? Words are an abstraction of objects. See, so words are not something that exist, but they help you to talk about, explain things which exist. Right? This is what intelligent creatures do. They abstract things. In the same way, when you have quantities, now it should be, the parallel should be simple. Right. So now, can anybody try to tell me what do they think about this phrase, abstraction of quantities? Just anything that you think, given that the parallel I've shown. All right. Okay. So what I mean is abstraction of quantities, meaning that you see different things. Okay. They might be different things, different objects, but they may be coming in the same quantity. Okay. Something that we can distinguish, surprisingly, to huge numbers. Animals cannot distinguish. Some animals, I think most mammals cannot distinguish beyond 10. Like elephants cannot distinguish between 10 elephants and 11 elephants. Even if they're their own, let's say, offsprings, they cannot distinguish. They get confused beyond that. Okay, of course, they don't have an abstraction of it, I think, but even they cannot even distinguish. Okay, but we can distinguish between quantities. That's a fundamental thing. But then we can also abstract it. So that's more like a conscious thing that we can distinguish and then we abstract it. Okay, so it's an abstraction of quantity. So let's say you have three. You can take pens, three. This is very silly. I don't want to write this, but the point is three things. But then we use this three, which is a sense of quantity, which we all have an understanding for, at least after a certain age, and then we have these things, and then we actually abstract it. So we use, now what I mean is, we use one symbol that takes care of that filters out this sense of three from all these things, and that really helps us. Otherwise, we'll have to use something else for three pens, and for three glasses, you will use some other symbol, like some other species might be doing this, and so that's what maybe makes life difficult there, or complicated, or whatever. Yeah. So this is the thing, what I mean. So you have one symbol that takes care, which works in different circumstances. Okay, and that's what numbers do. At least natural numbers to begin with, they clearly do that. There's no question about their importance. They're so important. So this is fine, right? Now I'm not going to define the natural numbers. The definition, surprisingly, is not easy. Now you may think that, yeah, I can just define so many symbols. These are the natural numbers. This set is something which you all have seen, right? This set is natural number, but this is not the natural number. This is just a set. A set by itself is not interesting. What are you going to do with these numbers, right? So it's a set where you have addition, you have multiplication, you do not have division. You have some sort of a division remainder, scheme, but it's not really a division. You can't divide and again end up in naturals all the time. So we have these things, but it turns out that this is not. I'm not going to go into the definitions. That's really going to take us into logic. But the point is that this is not a good definition. This is too many assumptions. This is like a religious text, in the sense that this is like too many things to start with, too many fundamental atomic assumptions. So this is not a good definition, but it's okay for us to understand what is going on. Okay. The real definitions come from, you have to define something called a successor operation, but we're not going into that. The point is not to go into the logic of it, but to just give an overview, and just so that this expansion, so that we see the expansion, and then so it makes sense to expand it further into irrationals, and then we see so on and so on. Okay, right. So this is find the natural numbers. Now I'm probably just going to remove everything here because we are very familiar with this object. Okay, right. And by the way, to all of you, if something is not clear, because sometimes I am going into some tangents which may not be okay. So point is that if something is not clear, just you can just interrupt me, yeah, and ask. So this is the natural numbers, right? But then human beings realize, human beings are never content. We realize that we need to go beyond this, right? We need to go into what are known as negative numbers, or what is known as integers, right? So integers. So again, I'll ask this question to you. Why do you think we need to go to integers? So yeah, integers, they are denoted by Z, which again, you people may have seen, and these are negative numbers, but why? Why do we need this expansion? Why can't we just, is this a necessity or is it a convenience? What do you think? Any kind of answer, just whatever you think about this. Anything you want to say about integers would be good. Yeah, no thoughts on integers, negative numbers. Yeah. Okay. Why do we need this expansion? So you see, initially here in the first stage, numbers were just used for counting. Right? We just had to count things and numbers were used. Okay. But then, and you can understand, we may have to remove things from certain things, right? From a certain quantity of things, you may have to borrow things, and sometimes the borrowing may not be possible. From the number 5, you may have to borrow 7 things or something. In some situation, I'm not going into the very concrete examples that is you can imagine, right? So you can, and this doesn't have an answer in the natural numbers, and so you need a new type of number. So see, this is in some sense a quantity, right? It is a quantitative situation, right? So you would want to have a number to abstract the quantity of it, of that situation, the quantity nature of that situation, you see. And that for that we introduce these numbers. It's not God given, right? You may argue that the counting numbers are God given, but these are again because of, you start with the natural numbers and then you have new demands to do new kinds of things. Like from 5, you may need to take away 7, or it may be some sort of a decrease, right? Like the temperature and so on, right? It may decrease below, whatever your standard was, whatever your base standard was. Of course, for that we need a 0 and so on, but not going into the logic of it, but you can understand, right? So for the need of such quantities or such situations, to the need to make such situations quantitative or have numbers represent them, as we know the usefulness, we need what are known as negative numbers, and this you call integers. But another way to see it would be when you want to capture directions. This is an interesting thing because this actually goes into different types of numbers, which we are not going to discuss, are known as complex numbers. Now, complex numbers can also be seen algebraically, but yeah, let me first be patient and say what I mean by this capturing directions. Okay, so capturing or abstracting, quantifying, whatever you can call, directions. Maybe I can just say one-dimensional direction. That's what it does. Now, what do I mean? Now you can understand this way. Like, so if you want to, like, say, start from your house, let's say the house is at 0, and you decide to go whatever to the right. You could decide to go to the right to your school, let's say, right? And let's say you walk 5 kilometers would be, yeah, let's say by bus. And then there is also to the left. Now this, you can understand what I'm getting at. It's all very obvious things, but just that we're just putting proper words and phrases and seeing how they all connect. Like, yeah. So then let's say there's a cinema hall, okay, and that's also, let's say, 5 kilometers. But then, so you can say 5 kilometers for both, but then you would have to use an extra word like right or left. Now the question is, can we, instead of saying this word, use a number? And the answer is yes. You can use a +5 on that side, and you can use a -5, and we can all agree upon. That's also an important thing in mathematics. There has to be something that we can all agree upon. that on the left it's minus. Or, if one side is plus and the other is minus, that's all that matters basically, right? And so just to capture the sense of direction, we need this negative number. So that's okay, right? And I suppose you people know like the details, the rules. Does everybody know like things like -1 times -1 is 1 and so on? Like you may not know a proof of it, but that's not the point of this class, because we are going to focus the proof part on the irrationals. But things like these rules, at least you people know, right? Okay, good. Then I assume they know. People know it. All right, so capturing directions. Now the issue was that this was just one-dimensional directions. Now you can imagine the same thing happening in 2D, two-dimensional directions, right? And really, we have number systems for them, and they are known as complex numbers. Okay, to capturing rotations, via numbers. This is a good way to introduce complex numbers, but we'll not be doing that today, of course. Then there are numbers which you can call numbers, but yeah, they are vectors. These are also new types of numbers in some sense, which also capture directions and so on and so on. It just continues, right? And then if you want to capture change and direction, then you have some sort of things like tensors. Right, yeah, tensors. So these are the things, but of course, we're not going into that direction. We're just going into a linear extension. From here, we want to go to, where we want to go. Right. Now, obviously, all of you know where I'm going next is into fractions. You can call them fractions. Fractions is not the right word, but let's first call them fractions, but because this is a maybe more evocative word. Right. So yeah, so again, my question is same. Why fractions? Why? Or if you will want to call it rationals, then why rationals? Okay, and by the way, by this time we already have progress to having a model for our number system, right? We have a 0 and we have a 1. Now, of course, there are definitions for what 0 is and so on. That's important, but logically speaking, but not very important for us. Okay, so I'm not going into that. Right. So why do we need fractions? And what are fractions and why do we need them? Yeah, anyone please say, because I'm sure people must have seen fractions. Yeah. And you don't think about if the other person is not saying. If you feel like saying, just say. Someone, yeah. Okay, so maybe we can start with some examples. So we have things like 2/3 and 1/4, and let's say 2/7. So anyone wants to explain what is meant by 2/3? What does this mean? What is it trying to do? Because we have used it. I mean, if I tell you to add 2/3 and 1/4, people can add it, you can multiply and so on. But what does it try to capture? Dividing 2 by 3, but then what does it try to capture? Two parts of 3, that makes more sense. Yeah, Adityan, yes, please say. 2 parts out of 3. That is the thing that we are trying to capture via numbers, right? Of course, saying 2 divided by 3 is also okay. That's rigorously speaking, that's the right thing to do. But yeah, 2 parts out of 3, right? So the idea is that you take something. Maybe for the definitions, you should take something which has size 1, and then you divide it into 3 equal parts, right? And you take 2 of them, and that's 2/3. Okay, that's 2/3. That's the quantity. That quantity is 2/3. If you do 4/6, then you see it's the same quantity in the end. Okay, not going to explicitly do it, but I guess people can understand. We divide it into 6 parts, right? To divide a bit more, do we have 6? Yes, 6 parts, 6 equal parts. Probably this doesn't look equal, but yeah. Now you can take 4 of them, but you see it's the same quantity in the end. It's the same quantity in the end, right? And that's what it means as numbers. Like, so as fractions, they are slightly, as fractions, we would call them different, right? Because I mean, you could see the entire process that, I mean, because fractions are not numbers. Rational numbers are numbers, okay? Fractions are the quantities, are the things that we are trying to find a number for. Okay, 4/6 is a fraction, 2/3 is a fraction, and they are different in some sense, right? But as numbers, the actual, if we're just interested in the final result, just in the quantity finally, then they are the same things. And I'm not going to the definitions of equivalent fractions and irreducible fractions and so on. We'll not do that, but this is the summary of it, right? And so fractions, so you see the use now. I mean, these things come, and these things are not numbers because this is less than 1 and bigger than 0, and so on and so on. So these are not the numbers that we already have. And so we need to introduce new numbers. And yeah, we call them fractions. The quantities are fractions, and we call them rational numbers. Okay, so the rational numbers are the right word. So we'll remove this and call them rational numbers. Right. So you probably spend more time on this than I planned to, but I think it's not bad, right? It's not bad to really understand the development, well enough so that we can appreciate the new numbers, and also it's maybe a good revision. Yeah, rational numbers. And so this is just my style of doing things. So I just want to see that yes, this is discovered next, and then this maybe comes next, and how you amalgamate it with the previous thing and everything. All that is important, though obviously not always we'll go into the details, okay, because of our time constraints. So yeah, this is the rational numbers. Okay, now when you introduce these new numbers, there's a lot of mathematically, there's a lot of baggage that comes with it, meaning that, well, you have introduced new symbols. Very good, you have introduced a new symbol. This is just a symbol, think about it, right? At the end of the day, it's just a new symbol that is capturing some sort of quantity. But then if you want to do arithmetic, if you want to define what this means, you would have to really be careful while doing it. Okay, so all this has been done already, and so we just know it, and maybe we take it for granted. That's fine. But my point is that, yeah, introducing the arithmetic and combining the arithmetic with the previous things is a challenge to begin with, but it's been done, so we don't have to think so much, but think a lot most of the times. But one can sometimes just think, like, it's really a remarkable thing the way this is, the arithmetic just gels so well. Okay, maybe just the nature of things is like that here. These fundamental things and so on, right? And so this is, maybe I should just shorten it a little bit. Yeah, here, right? So we have these numbers. So maybe just for a sense, I can give this 2/3. Yeah, just an example, right? And so on. All right. Are these numbers? So now the question is, so I will not say, see, there's one way to say this is, are these all the numbers? That's not a good question, in the sense that, well, these, as you can see, these numbers are introduced out of purpose. Now, I'm not saying that maths is done for practical purpose, but my point is that these numbers are introduced out of purpose. Now, of course, later on you can see some interesting properties of these numbers, and you can play around with them just for the fun of it to begin with. Right? That's number theory. Right? Just taking these numbers and just playing with them like toys, and then building theories and so on for them. That's a good thing, and of course it can have applications back, in real life also. But that's the different thing. For example, you have these things, and from here you can ask some very interesting questions, like, find the last digit of 2 to the power, find the last digit of this number. And there are interesting ways to do it, and some of you might have seen things like this. Okay, and divisibility questions and so on and so on. But that's a different thing. So that's obviously there. But my point is that these are this can be motivated by need in some sense, right? Now my question is, so I'm not asking are these all the numbers, but the question is, can you think of a situation where these numbers will not be sufficient? That's the question. Can we think of situation where these numbers are not sufficient. That would be a real push to maybe come up with new numbers or new symbols and this, to quantify that, abstract the quantity nature of that situation, let's say. And by the way, just interrupt you once. So here in the rationals, I did plan to discuss some interesting, some game-like questions, in the sense that just some features of it. So I will not do that because I have planned to cover something which I have just half an hour is left. So I will give some things from here in the assignments, and I'm willing to let go of discussing the details of this because the goal was anyways to discuss your rationals. Okay, so I will give you some problems from here which I have not discussed about, but if people can try it, it should be relatively simple because rationals you people have seen. Right. But yeah, now let's come to the actual question, because this should be the topic, the irrational numbers. Right. So I'll remove these now, maybe. Or we can keep it. So can you think of situations where, of course, you don't have to think of a novel situation. Maybe we cannot. It's very difficult. We can stumble upon it, but we can't think of it really, in some sense. But since you people, in some sense, know irrational numbers, can you think of a situation where they naturally arise? Some geometric situation? Anyone? You can remember some calculations in geometry where answer was root 2. Maybe you can just put that situation. That's a situation, right? Or anything new would be fantastic. Exactly, yeah, and that is maybe, well, the documented history says that was one of the ways in which irrational numbers or new numbers apart from these three were found, and people were rather surprised. And I mean, Pythagoras himself, this is short, Pythagoras himself believed, so they had a whole school, right, where he had followers and the community was there, and secret society. They used to do a lot of, for that time, advanced geometry. And Pythagoras and his school believed that there were no numbers beyond these three. Okay, there were no numbers beyond these three. But then Pythagoras himself stumbled upon a number which was not among these three, and then they decided to keep it secret because all sorts of back in the days, you can understand things were different. So the Pythagoras situation, right, and that's really saying that these numbers, irrational numbers, are really necessary, and we'll see the details now. Okay, so maybe I can remove these. Right. So by the way, all of you know the Pythagoras theorem: a square plus b square equals to c square. The height square plus the base square equals to the square of the hypotenuse. Right. So let me just say that once. So if this is a and this is b and this is c, then c square is a square plus b square. I suppose you people know this. All right. Okay, good. Right. So whenever there are squares, you can understand you can end up with rational numbers. But let's see. We'll take the simplest case. Take just the very simplest case, which actually you don't even need Pythagoras theorem for. And now this is a good maybe a good question, because you see Pythagoras theorem is a nice theorem, but its proof is a little, it has layers, right? It is not, if I just ask you the proof right now, maybe you will be a little, you'll take some time to do it, or maybe you cannot do it if you have, so it's a difficult, it's not such a very simple proof, right? It's a result, it's a proper result. I mean, of course, using elementary methods, but here is a good challenge for you people that you can take. This is a geometry question besides the thing. You have a triangle ABC, okay? Find AC without, and when I say without, I mean don't try to mimic the proof of Pythagoras theorem, which itself I don't think is a very fun thing to do if you're just doing it for the sake of just mimicking it here. Find AC without using Pythagoras theorem, without using any theorem to say. In fact, you don't need any theorem. That is like, it's very interesting that you can do this. Okay, Pythagoras theorem. All of you, please try this, and maybe you can send me solutions, or next class we can discuss it, or you can just send me along the way during the week or something. So find AC without using Pythagoras. Just try to find it some other way. And of course, don't measure it. You really cannot measure it also. Precise, you cannot measure it. In fact, using a ruler, you cannot do it because the number that you get is irrational. And that's really the point. But when I say find, I mean don't measure and find, but just find it by some observations and something. That's what you have to think. Okay, but then we know that this AC, I mean, we don't know what AC is right now. AC is not a number for us, but we know this, that 1 square plus 1 square is equal to AC square. Okay. Now, I won't rush and say AC is root 2, but then what's the point of introducing irrational numbers? Then they're already introduced. My point is that AC is a number whose square is 2. Now I'm just going to call AC equal to X. That is again just for convenience. Don't want to write it again and again. And it helps in focusing on the more important things. Right? So AC is a number. I mean, I don't know. AC is a quantity, maybe to be very precise. AC is a quantity whose square is 2. Meaning that AC multiplied with AC is 2. It's such a number. Now, one can just say that X is then a number which I will denote X. I can call X Pythagoras number. I mean, this can be done. This could have been done historically, right? Fortunately, it was not done maybe. But this is done, right? If you look at a lot of numbers, they say this is Planck's number, Planck's constant, and so on and so on, right? It could be said. But this was so fundamental and it needed so much computational use that we decided to give a more, I don't know what to call it, an objective name, something like that. So we didn't call it this, but you can understand you could have called it this. Right? So my point in saying all this is that, look, this square root of 2 is not something that is you have to use it, but it's just that, I mean, you end up have to use it, but it's something that is a choice. I mean, it turns out to be a very nice choice of notation, but it's just a notation. Okay, but that's not important. The notion is more important here, right? What is X? Okay, that is really, so you can call it Pythagoras number or anything. That's fine. But before you do all that, the more fundamental question is, does X belong to the number system we already have in place? There is a question, right? So putting it more mathematically, okay, is X a rational number? Is X a number of the form P by Q? Just you can just think of it like that, right? Rationals are just numbers of the form P by Q, or a fraction here. Is X a rational number? See, this is more important than calling it something, or maybe if the answer is no, then that's really a bad, strange situation. If you think about, if you just take yourself 2000, or maybe not 2000, maybe 3000 years back, right? It will be you won't get sleep at night. It's something that is not a rational number. What is it then? But here is the question: is X a rational number? Yeah, that is a question. So let's think about this. And how do you, if you say something like if it's not, then how do you really talk about it? So again, we will use the representation of rational numbers. Simply put, I just want to, I'm using the word representation because it really captures a lot of things you will see. But well, simply put, it is just saying that we will use the symbols. We will use the mathematical definition of rational numbers that is of the form P by Q. Simply, yeah, just P by Q. So the question, this question is the same question. Is breaking it down to just symbols and calculations maybe. Is X of the form, is X equal to P by Q for some P and Q? That is our question, right? In the yeah. And now this is the same question. So when I do this, I mean same, like nothing has changed. I'm not like just unpacking. Yeah. What does this break down to? This breaks down to is P square by Q square. Okay, now that's how you multiply rational numbers, right? You multiply the numerators and you multiply the denominators, right? if you have, so yeah, I mean, I suppose you people know it, but it's p square, p square. This is in some sense just a definition, right? How you define multiplication. All right. So is this equal to 2? For some p and q, can you think of, or does there exist p and q for which this is true? Okay. And now this breaks down to, so I'm trying to show you that this is nothing, no sub, like in the end, the conclusion is something, yes or no, whatever it is, it should not come as, oh, wow, I don't know how I could have thought of it or something like that. Though there's still a sense of, wow, you've been, in the end, you prove that you'll prove what you prove, but still it should be like, should be a part of it. Yeah, it should be just, yeah, this. Now I want you people to participate here. Think here, how would you go about saying whether this is possible, not possible, what? Can you think of, maybe, can you think of numbers p and q for which this happens? You know, you make some, try to make guesses and try to get a feeling. Yeah, just think about this. So what do you, so just, we can forget for a moment that the answer is square root of 2, and it's, maybe some of you know that it's not rational. Those things might actually be hindering you from thinking, in a neutral way, maybe, in a way that's useful. So just given this equation, given that there is a p square here, and there is a, and p and q's are just natural numbers, right? That's important. P's and q's are just numbers. So these are just some numbers, might be 1, 4, 3, whatever, right? Okay. Given this equation, do you think you can find a p and q? I'm not saying to prove it that you cannot find or can. Do you think you can find a p and q which work? Yeah. I can try to put, right? If I put 1, 1, it's not true. It's 1 equal to 2. If I put p and q to be 1, right? If I put p to be 2, then I get 4. And if I put, I can't put, if I put q to be 1, then I get 2. If I put p to be, if I put q to be 2, then I get 8, right? Get 2 into 4, 8. If I put q2, not equal, so 2 doesn't work. So in this way, you can try the numbers, you can try, and then what can you say? Do you think such a p and q would exist? Because that conviction, that, having that hunch is very important, whether it's possible or not. Yeah. So let's say, so I want each of you to maybe say what you people feel. Do you feel yes, is there a number, or do you feel there's no such numbers p and q? Yeah. Adityan, what do you think? Do you think such number p and q are going to exist? Are you able to find such numbers after maybe some trial? Okay. Vansh, what do you think? Do you think you are able to find such some p and q for which this is working just after putting some values? Yeah. Okay. What values have you tried? You can just, yeah, say if you want. Let's see. So this is just a matter of trial. Okay. Mathematics, I mean, in the end, we have proofs and so on, but it has to be trials first, right? So let's try. Let's try together. So let's put p equal to 1 and let's put q equal to 1. What happens? What do you get? Right? You get 1 square equal to 2 times 1 square. Is it true? This is nonsense. This is not true. Right? you put p equal to 1. So it's like I'm running through all the values, right? This is certainly not work, right? The right hand side will become more. And then you keep trying like this. Right? You put q equal to 1. And then you try again, right? I think I've already tried this one. You get 4 times 4 equal to 2. That's also not true. And in this way you try. Maybe you're now trying to balance things. So you put this equal to 4 and this equal to 2. Again, I think I've tried this. No, this doesn't work. It gives 16 equals to 2 into 4, and so it doesn't work. Yeah, and now you can put 2 and 4, and you can check that I've already tried. I think it doesn't work. So after putting so many values, we see that it doesn't seem to work, right? So then, yeah, well, then what do you people think? Should there be a P and Q? I'm asking this question because because we have to be a part of this to really, in some sense, like appreciate or like be able to use this technique later on. Right? Okay. Right. So it seems like this is not possible. Is that right? Does it sound correct? And it seems like this is not possible. Now I know I'm just extending the proof, which some of you may have seen, of the fact that root 2 is irrational, but I believe this way you can really just get the essence of it. Yeah. So it seems like this is not possible. Now, how do you mathematically formally show that something is not possible? So it is not like you're trying to show something is possible, something exists, something solid, something tangible, or something conceptually, some number finally is true, or it's not like getting an answer, right? It's a matter of showing that something is not possible, right? Okay, that's a good one. P and Q equal to 0, right? But as Arithro, and I think as Arithro you would know, but that's something that I have missed. So that's right. That is a good correction to make, that I should make, is that Q cannot be 0, right? Because you cannot divide by 0. That's an assumption I believe you people know, right? That fractions, you cannot have 0 in the denominator, because I mean, if it's 0, then how do you divide it into pieces? Think about it like that. There are other ways to think about it, that you cannot divide by 0. So yeah, Q cannot be 0. Sorry. Yeah. Sorry, mean that I didn't introduce this when I should have said it. Yeah. But okay. Yeah. I am not assuming that. So you see, that is, I can understand. Yeah, it's good to take that assumption can give you a simpler argument. Okay, but we just want to do a naive exploration and end up with a proof. Okay, you will see that that assumption is not needed to be made. Okay, but you're right. If you make that assumption that P and Q, so this is a finer point. If you make the assumption that P and Q have no factors in common, then you will get to the proof in one step. That's like going to the last case directly by making that assumption. It's a good thing to do, but we are not assuming, because that will introduce some, but to be real, yes, when you have rational numbers, you always put them in the lowest form. You put them like this. So if 2 by 3 is there and 4 by 6 is there, my point is very simple. Okay, is that when 2 by 3 is there and 4 by 6 is there, you consider this as a rational number, not this. You never consider this. You only consider that for when you want to take LCM and so on, right? Otherwise, you just take the simplest form. So you can do that, but I want to show that you don't even need to do that. That is just for writing a very neat proof, one two-liner maybe. Okay. Anyways, so it seems like this is not possible. Now my point is, how do you go about showing such a thing, right? And this is like, you can think of a situation like, suppose you and your friend are debating, okay, and you're trying to prove your friend wrong. Let's say you're debating about something and you're trying to prove him wrong about something. Then how do you go about? So one way would be, you try to directly produce something in a proof that it is not possible, right? In the sense that, I mean, it could be anything, right? I mean, if you can directly produce something that, look, I have this much in my account balance, or I have written this many pages or something, which has a direct proof. If you can do that, then that's good. Okay. Or you can show that I traveled this much, you have the ticket or something like that. You can directly show. Okay. But sometimes you cannot directly convince your friend, or you cannot directly prove him or her wrong. So this is some situation which, before going to the mathematical version of it, I want to say the practical version. I mean, so that you can relate to it maybe better. There are one way to convince your friend is to directly go about this, right? But what's the other way to do it? How do you do it? I mean, sometimes when you get really frustrated, how do you sometimes, or when you don't find a direct way to prove or you're wrong, what do you try to do? You try to use his own argument against him, something like that, or you try to, steel man his point. Like you try to assume that he is correct. That basically comes down to this, right? You assume that he is correct. So you say, okay, let's assume that you are correct. Okay, and then based on his assumption, you prove that he's wrong. Have people ever experienced this? Have you ever done this, or has anybody done this to you? In just while talking, right? Yeah, I think others. Yeah, Adityan, do you follow what I'm trying to say? Means this the idea of it? Yeah, or because this is just a little maybe different. Okay. You don't. Okay. Yeah, right. So, okay. So the way to do it would be, let's say there is a place A and a place B. Okay. And let's say that there are two places in between. Okay. And let's say that from here to here to go, let's say you need five whatever units. Okay, 5 rupees. Let's say 5 Indian rupees. And let's say from here to here to go, let's say you need 7 rupees. Okay. And let's say from here you need 8. Right. Now you go out. Okay. You go out of your home and you want to go. Let's say this is your home, and you want to go from the home to the other destination. Okay. And let's say you go out with 19 rupees. You go out with 19 rupees. So rupees 19. It's just an example I'm trying to come up with direct. So yeah, let's say you go out with 19 rupees. Okay, your parents are giving you 19 rupees. You're just trying to go out. Okay, and then you come home and you come home and your parents know that this much and this much and this much was required in the 3 places. Okay, to go from that place to that, and then eventually go to the destination. Maybe this is the destination. Yeah, and you had to go through all this. And then, but your parents know these 3 things. Okay, and then you tell your parents, maybe you try to lie to them, and you tell them that I went to this place B. Okay, I went there. Okay, and you're sort of lying to them. You're trying to, yeah. And then they ask you, how much money do you have? You say, I had 19. They say, no, you are lying. Then you say, how do you know I'm lying? They'll say, okay, assume that you are correct. Right? They will say, okay, I assume, let's say you went from place A to place B. Then you must have gone to this place C, and you needed 5 rupees there. And then from C, you had to go to D. You needed 7 rupees there. So you spent 12 rupees there. Then from D, you would have gone to B. You would have spent 8 rupees there. So in total, you would have spent 20 rupees there. But you only have 19 rupees. So you are lying. Is it more clear now? You see, so how did they prove you wrong? They proved you wrong by assuming that you are correct, and then getting some contradiction in the end. That's what's called a contradiction. But you see, like, this would clearly prove that you are lying, or whatever, that person is lying. Is this example making sense to everyone? Yeah, Aritro and yeah, Vansh. Yes. Yeah, so that's what I'm trying, and this happens all the time. This is really a good thing. You try to steel man. I mean, an extension of this is to steel man the other person's hypothesis even further, and that is like, making a stronger and stronger assumption, and then that really helps you to get a contradiction easily. But that's a different kind of level of nuance which we don't fortunately need here. Okay, that would be like, assuming that it's in the lowest form, if someone wants to think about that. But that aside, that's not important right now. This is an example. Okay, now it would be a good exercise. Now this is again not maybe you may think not a mathematics exercise, but try to come up with a different, maybe each of you can do this, okay? And this is a good homework to do, because really, you see, I could have just told you prove by contradiction and you can just follow it. Hopefully you can follow it, should not be hard, but really you must understand that this is not alien to mathematics. It is not something that you're just doing in mathematics here and just, not something that ordinary people can do, or we're not doing all the time we do this, okay? So come up with more examples like this. So obviously, maybe people have not seen this mathematically anywhere, but that's the whole point. Trying to come up with practical examples. Come up with examples, maybe more interesting examples. My example is also interesting, maybe. Okay, come up with more examples of such proofs. I'm just using the word proofs, but you understand it's like a debate, and you're trying to prove someone wrong. That's better. That's more interesting maybe than mathematical proofs. I mean, at least, if you're just getting introduced to such things. But later on, of course, these are so beautiful things that it's really fantastic in some sense. Yeah. But anyways, they go hand in hand. Yeah. So please, you can note this down if you want to. I'll be sending the recording. Yeah, but note this down and try to really do it, because really this is what you will keep you. I mean, this is what will help you when you are lost, maybe mathematically, and maybe just relate. And so many reasons it's useful. Okay, so please do it. Okay, please come up with more examples like this, where you prove someone wrong and like this. But of course, don't give a one word this thing. I mean, don't give a rhetorical kind of, in a sense, sometimes we say, right, in the rhetorical, in that way, proving someone wrong, and just in one shot, we say the opposite thing, and kind of it gives the expression. But try to come up with an example like I have come up with, in the sense that it should be a little layered. Okay, like yeah. So come up with that, something like that. Yeah, can be more interesting, I suppose. Yeah. Okay, so that is what we're trying to do. Okay, we seems like this is a lie. It seems to us that this is not true. Okay, and this is where, like other situations, then you'll see, you will be able to decide on your own that I should go by this kind of proof. That is what I want you people to get out of this. And when you make your own examples also, you'll be able to see that whether in that situation you could have given a direct argument, or you could have gone by this kind of argument, or you could have gone by this kind of argument, or maybe going by this kind of argument was the only way. That is the deeper point of it. Sometimes this is the only way. Sometimes the only way to prove someone wrong is to assume that they are correct and get some counterexample. Now, I'm not going into when and why, what's the only way, and when that's the only way. But point is that it's something that's okay. But we'll see that details later. First, people just try to come up with more examples. Okay, that would be more important, I believe. Right. So, because it seems to us that this is not possible, we assume that this is possible. I mean, to be honest, maybe subconsciously, that's what we are already doing. Effectively, that's what we were doing already, right? We are already assuming it, and that's how we got it, that it doesn't seem to be correct, okay? Not a question mark. So we assume that this is possible, assume that this is true. That is more, in some sense, that from one perspective, from a purely problem solving perspective, that helps you to get started, right? You assume that it is possible, assume that this is true. So you assume that there is a number P, and there is so to be very explicit, there is a P and Q such that P square equal to 2Q square. Now the problem is, don't ask me what, because obviously that doesn't exist. Okay, that's the whole thing with these things. It actually doesn't exist in the end, but we assume that it is possible. But now, if this is possible, then what? Now, at this point, it's just a matter of making some observations. If this is possible, then what observations can you make? What can you say about P? Maybe that's a better specific question. What can you say about P? Exactly, yeah. P. Is it clear to everyone that P must be even? Right? Because you see, 2 is here, right? It's very definition of it, as Amanda said. It's a very definition, 2 times anything is even. So this is just the even, right? So P is even. right? And we will use it. Okay. Before that, let me just, as usual, pull the board up. I'll start using maybe a different writing place where I don't have to do this. I can just, because deleting everything at once uh, might not, it's not maybe a good thing, but then this thing also takes a bit of time. But anyways, meanwhile, you can think, I will switch to a different writing thing, software. Yeah. Okay. P, P is even, right? So that, what does that mean? It means that P, I mean, you have to really use it quantitatively in the equation, right? So you can say that P is equal to 2 times, you can use anything. Okay, maturely this is called use P1, but I'll not do that. Might just create confusion. So let's say this P times 2 times T. Okay, and we just write it. So just write it. So 2 times T square, right? That will be 4 times T square. Is that right? Okay, 2 times T square. That's 4 times T square, right? Treat T just like a number. It is just, I mean, it is a number. It is just a number that we don't know the value of, but it's just a number. It's 4T square. And then there is 2Q square. Now you will cancel. That's no doubt you will cancel, right? This is again not a surprising step. It's the only thing to do. Now what can you say about Q? Q is again a number. These things you can see letters all on the board, but they are all numbers. Okay, so that's what I want people to feel like, because sometimes get scared with too many variables, but it's just numbers. Okay, so once again you can say that Q is also even, right? Q is also even. So what will you do? Now it is just, it's just a loop, right? It's just a cycle that we are in, right? Q is equal to 2s. Again, Q is just a number. It's 2 times s. S is another number, smaller number. S is a smaller number, right? S will be smaller. 2 times of it is Q, strictly smaller number. And so just write it, 4s square. Now what do you get? You get T square. Does it look fishy to anyone? Yeah. I started with saying that this is true. Again, P and Q are not both 0, right? Q is not 0. I started with this, assuming that that is true. It is true. It actually holds. There are numbers P and Q for which it holds. And I'm ending up with something like this. Can anybody point out what is fishy? Because see, at the end of the day, something is fishy. So I mean, even if you cannot find the reason, also you can just say done by contradiction. Okay, just saying, don't do that, but try to actually go as far as you can with the argument, and hopefully you complete the argument. But yeah, something is fishy. What is fishy here? What is it that doesn't seem right? Something doesn't seem right. I started. Yeah. So Amanda, go on. That's right. You keep dividing it by 2 and you keep getting the same thing, and that is a problem. Okay, so if you use the simplest form to start with, then the proof is already done, right? If you assume that P and Q have nothing in common, if they are like 2 by 3 or 4 by 5, or then obviously you cannot have both to be even numbers. Is that clear with everyone? Yeah, then you cannot really have this. Okay, proof is already done in that sense. Okay, you cannot have this because that's, you assumed that P and Q have nothing in common, but you have found that 2 is in common. So that's already a violation to our assumption. So that's not correct. Okay. That way you can say. But if you didn't make such an assumption, because this maybe you won't think of it maybe, but then you can see you had started with this, you came up with this, which is like smaller, right? It is smaller equation, right? T and S are smaller. But you can do the same thing again. I mean, you can do the exact same argument and you will come with some x and x square and 2 y square, where x and y will be smaller, right? X will be smaller than t. T is smaller than p. And again, you will come up with something even smaller. Do you think you can continue like this? You cannot, right? You have a number p, even if it was 1 million, right? And then this was 999,000 or whatever, right? T. And even if this was 998,000, whatever, 999, whatever, right? Still the numbers are decreasing, right? And you can't continue like this. You can't continue like this. This is not correct. And but you will, but I mean, we are continuing, right? From here, you will end up with this, but there's nothing stops you from going here. And so on and so on. You'll keep going. And that is a problem. So that's something absolutely absurd. And so that violates the fundamental nature of natural numbers. That is, you cannot keep going down. You cannot keep going down. Is that right? You cannot start with any natural number and keep going down forever. You'll have to stop. You can start with a number and keep increasing, but you cannot keep going down. And that's what is known as the mathematical induction. But we're not using that explicitly. But that's saying now we don't have to write a rigorous proof like this, but the idea should be clear, right? That this is something is fishy. That's what I want you to take away from here. And more importantly, this method of proof, right? Okay, so does it make sense? Any questions? No? All right. So then I'll have to stop here today. I think it's okay. We tried to really explore the thing, but I did plan to do other things. So I'll do that the next time. Okay. I will tell you when the next class is, depending on everyone's convenience on this topic. And of course, this was just what I wanted to start with. So other questions will be more interesting questions, in the sense that you'll have to really find out something or calculate something and manipulate some expression. Some more interesting thing. This was more of a different flavor of thing. It's just a proof kind of thing, right? But maybe it was fun. Okay. All right, then. So if there are no questions, then that's it for today.